Hey, how you doing? This is David Cherry again, and my next tip is on counting word frequency in PHP. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with counting word frequency within a string. Now, the end goal would be for most programmers is to count word frequency within a file. Now, what is word frequency? Word frequency is how many times a given word occurs within a file, and that's word frequency. Okay, and so we can get the number of times a particular word occurs within a file. And the more advanced the script is, the more data you can grab from the script. You know, for example, you can get how many times a particular word occurs within a file. Also, how many words are in a file total. And so, but we're going to start off with a simple script on getting word frequency from a string, not a file. Okay, so what is a string? Okay, a string simply is basically like a sentence. Give you an example. I love eating cherry pie, ice cream, and when I eat cherry pie and ice cream, I want to sleep. Okay, so that is, you know, a long sentence, a compound sentence, okay? And in there you would have commas and stuff like that, you know, quotation marks. And when you do a word frequency on a string, you also need to remove any punctuation or diacritical marks that may occur due to accent marks that a lot of languages may use. So you want to remove that as well, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a good example of counting word frequency that I wrote. I wrote it to be simple. A lot of the programs out there are pretty hard and really long, and you know, I wanted to shorten it up. But as I said, this is a simple script. Okay, so let's go and see my tip on counting word frequency within a string. Let's go right to it. As noted earlier in my introduction, we're counting word frequency in a string. And I created what is called a user-made function. Okay, so here's the title. Alright. And I noted when I wrote this out that it's a user-made function. Now, what is the difference between a built-in function and a user-made function? Okay, a user-made function is the function that the programmer creates. Okay, so to give you an example of what I mean by a user-made function, I will highlight the code here. Alright, so all the code that you're seeing me here create, I'm highlighting right now, all this code right here in this area that you see highlighted is a user-made function. Okay, it's a function that I created to obtain the task of counting the words within a string. Now, the string that we're going to work with is defined by a variable. Okay, and when we declare a variable and we define it, okay, when you do that, basically you define the variable, and whatever you give as its value will be preceded by an equal sign. So defining the variable of our string is right here. You see me highlighting. Okay. Now, when you define a variable in PHP, all right, what you're going to end up doing is you declare your variable, which is what is highlighted here. And since I'm dealing with a string, and most programmers will use the same thing. They'll use the $sign and then the letters str for string, or you could write it out long. Okay, and so it just helps them remember what they're doing in their code. And so I declared the variable right here, but I don't want the variable to be empty or null or undefined, so I have to assign a value to it, and I do that with this right here, the equal sign. Now, what is the value that I've assigned? The value that I've assigned is right here to my variable. And if you notice, I got a period and some exclamation marks for punctuation within the variable. All right. So let's review a little bit on what I'm saying. Okay. For those of you that are new to PHP programming. Okay. PHP, when you program in PHP, PHP is a file, but it's also a scripting language, programming language. And so as a file, the extension would be .php. Okay. But like a web document, HTML document, which has opening and closing tags, PHP has opening and closing tags as well. So here are the opening and closing tags. Okay, the opening tag for PHP will look like this. So you'll have a left wedgie, a question mark, and PHP. Okay, those tags are absolutely necessary. And then at the very end of your PHP document, you're going to have this here as a closing tag. Okay, it's extremely important that you use both opening and closing tags. Okay, now so now we're going to begin to the word count. Now if you see here, I got function. Okay. Now what I'm doing this with func lets me know that I'm preparing to do what is called an alias. Okay. So what I'm doing is that func, all right, is going to be an alias for the function word count. Okay. So where's the function word count? Remember when I said that I'm going to create a user-made function? See? So the function name of the user-made function is right here. Word count. Okay? All right. And then, so when we look at the whole function begins coming down this way right here. All right. That's the whole function. Now, you have what's called a function body. Okay? The function body begins with this bracket right here and ends with a bracket down here. And anything between the opening and closing brackets becomes the function body of the user-made function. So where's the function body? The function body is anything and everything here. Okay? Now I'm explaining this to you so if you're new you can understand what the code is saying. Okay, what I'm doing. All right? So that's everything you see highlighted there is the function body. Okay, now the object of the function, which is by name, when I do this right here and this is typed out, you're declaring a function right there, just by doing that. Okay, but all functions have what are called perimeters. Okay, it could be a perimeter of nothing in it because a function doesn't need a perimeter, or if it needs a perimeter, which in this case it does, it has one perimeter, and that perimeter would be here, string. You see me highlight called string. Okay. So what I'm doing is when I create the function, the idea is to pass the string right here, hello world, okay, by the variable defined called string right here into the function, the perimeter right here. So in other words, I define my variable first, then I define my variable and the necessary variables in the beginning of my document, which is what I've done here. Okay. Now, in defining my variables first, okay, all right, I'm setting up to alias, all right, the function, okay. So what I do is I define a variable by name func, okay, preparing for the alias, all right, and then what it's going to do is it's going to alias the actual function I'm calling word count, which is right here, okay, all right, and now the next step is basically pass the value to the function. You know, you can pass by value or you can pass by reference. Here I'm passing by value. Okay, so what I did is I set it up to alias right here. And now I'm going to pass by value. So What this basically does is this variable is now going to call the set up this variable. All right, it's going to pass the string right here into this function right here. All right. So in reality, what I'm doing is I'm passing by a value using an anonymous function. Okay. Now, so these are all the variable declarations necessary for me to work with. Now, the next thing is as I said, is to create the function. So I define the function right here. Okay. And then I set its perimeters within here. All right. Now, the function body is everything between this line and this line right here. Okay. Now, the function body in whole is everything that you see me highlighting right here. So I'm explaining the code to you. All right. And what it basically does. Okay. Now, the function has something that is unique within it. And what that is called an array. Okay. So anyway, an array is kind of like a list. You have a list of items like apple, peaches, pears. You know, if you have an array for fruit, that'd be a list of fruit. So you can look at an array as a list. Okay. Now in programming, there is a slight difference between the meaning of array and a list in programming languages and even in PHP, but the terms can be used anonymously for explanation purposes. Okay. So anyway, the array, all right, is right here where I've actually output the information with an array right here. Okay. So, but let's go back up here. Okay. So, you know, the array name is this. All right. The array name will be found here. Okay. And then the array uses what's called key values. Passing things by key values. Okay. And I'm not going to get real deep into that. The main thing is to have the code present for you to copy and for you to play with. If you type it out, you know, you stop the video and you look at it, you can type it out. All right. And if you have a web server where you can serve documents for testing on your computer, all right, then you'll be able to test it out. But you'll have to have a web server, all right, and one that's set up to work with PHP programming language. All right. So anyway. All right, so anyway, here we have the total word count, okay? Now, what I do is, you know, this echo statement right here basically writes to the document or outputs the content between these quotation marks here, okay? But because of this function right here, string word count, this function here that I'm using, okay, now this here is a built-in PHP function right here, all right? String word counts a built-in PHP function. All right, then I'm using within the function user-made function that I created called word count. Okay. All right. So what it does is it gets a string word count to begin with right here, and I use this here. The period is what we would call concatenation operator, and a concatenation operator here. Okay. All right, and then for the reason that is like joining three strings together. Okay, so this would be one string. All right, this would be another string right here, created for a user-made function, and then this would be the other string. All right, so the little period right here that you see me highlighting, and the period here, allows me to join all of it together. Because for this function to be called here as I'm doing it right now, okay, I have to have that because I didn't alias the function with a variable name or a declaration. All right. Now let me go on to the next one. Okay, so this here, you know, gets the word count, the total word count right here in PHP, this user-made function. Now what I want to do is once I get the word count and I have the string, okay, which is right here. All right, so I take string using a PHP built-in function called preg replace. All right. Excuse me. And end with the preg replace, which I'm not going to discuss preg replace right now. I'm just telling you what the code does. Okay, within preg replace, all this stuff that you see right here, okay, is what is going to be matched and replaced. Okay, all right, and so it's going to replace and match depending on what this code means and how it's used. And that's really hard to explain in one setting, and it takes a while. You'll have to learn preg replace function to understand this stuff. Okay. But anyway, basically what this code does here for the string, okay, if you want to use it in the future, is I put this comment here, remove punctuation. So what this basically does, this variable declaration right here with the built-in PHP function preg replace, okay, allows me to remove the punctuation, which would be, like commas, double quotation marks and stuff like that, question marks, exclamation marks, anything that will affect the word frequency, okay, that has to be removed, okay. And so this is what this basically does right here. All right. Okay, now after I removed all the punctuation from the string, okay, all right, then the next thing I want to do is break the string into an array or a list. So that's why I use the PHP built-in function explode. Okay, so what I do first is I declare an array. So here's the array declaration right here. Then I define the value of the array, okay, using the built-in PHP function explode, okay. And so when you explode it, okay, you explode it based on, here in this case, white space, because there's nothing there but, empty space, white space. So what that refers to is this right here. See the white space here, and the white space here, and the white space here. What I'm doing here by using the explode function is I'm taking this string, all right, and the white space becomes a delimiter to figure out how many words are in there. Okay, all right, and so give me the delimiters. So when you do this, okay, by using the built-in string function right here of PHP, I can get the word count, the total number of words that are in this right here, this document. Okay, all right, and then the next thing I decide to do, what I want to do, is to remove the punctuation after I get the word count. So when you see this, you'll see equal total word count. When I show you how it works, you'll see that. Okay, all right, so this line right here in the PHP code within the user-made function, all right, creates a word count. All right, now that I got the total word count, the next thing I want to do is, as I stated, is remove the punctuation. So I've already showed you I removed the punctuation. Okay, all right, but now what I want to do after I remove the punctuation, okay, all right, is break it into array, which is what I was getting into and how I did it. All right. And now that I got the thing broke down, I got the total word count, I got it broke into an array, I got all the punctuation removed and all the diacritical marks removed and accent in European languages, and etc. All right, then the next thing I want to do is get the frequency of each word, how many times each word occurs within the string. Okay, so this is what this code basically does right here. Okay, okay. So if you notice, I wrote down a comment here to remind me of what I'm doing. I use the PHP function array count values. This is a built-in function. Whenever you see this right here, a lot of times, sometimes I do the same thing in my code, but a lot of times when you see like array count values, okay, or like string.word count, you can pretty well count, but that's a built-in function in PHP and not a user-made function. Okay, but as you can see, I did create a user-made function that basically does the same thing. I got word count. Okay. Now, so anyway, once I explode the string into an array. Okay, explode means split, kind of like split. In PHP, you know, there is a function called split that's more older, antiquated. Okay, so nowadays people use explode. All right, and so that you break it into array. Okay, you break it into an array by using a delimiter of a blank space, and so that's what you're doing here. Okay, so what I did is before I even did that, I started removing all the punctuation I didn't want. Now I got the array. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the values to get the frequency of each word. All right, so now I create a variable called count. I declare a variable called count. Then I use another built-in PHP function called count. Okay, and then I put in the name of the array that I want to count. What it does is it gives me a total count. Okay. Now, what I do is that I don't want a count based on the key. I want the array count based on the values. So I set up for array count on the values. Okay. So anyway, all right. So after I got the count in the elements, then I go ahead and I work on the output of the array. I define the array, and I'm going to put it out. So here's the array right here. Okay. This right here is the array's name. All right, if I had declared the variable other than array, and let's say I put the array, I did the array word count, you know, as a name here, then this will be array word count. So that's the actual array. But now we're going for the key values within the array, and so this is what this represents right here in PHP. Okay, and then we output the content of what is in the string. And so echo the word key was found dot value times. So anyway, if you want to know how to get the word count in simple code, this is probably the best and most simplest code you'll ever find on the net for getting the key value word count within a string. Okay, and you can use the same code, apply it to getting the word count and frequency within a file. Okay, by just a simple change. Okay, and I'll have a video on that at a later time. All right, so now let's go ahead and look at the example output. The example output of what I'm here to show you is a tip: count word frequency within a string. Okay, now as I stated earlier, this is in my database. Okay, now here's the example output. Now, I wouldn't pay attention to this right here because this isn't a file on my computer. I wouldn't pay attention to that because that, you know, I wrote for me on my computer to show me what the code within this file is. In fact, what happens is this actual file that you're looking at right now, all right, if it was to be served to you on your computer and you was to view my database, all right, then this is what you would come up with because that's how I put it. In fact, this is more code and stuff than what you've seen I just showed you. But the output's what we're interested in. So what are we interested in? The output below is right down here. Okay, so it shows you that hello was found 1 times. Shows you that world was 1 times. It shows you that good was found 2 times. Shows you that morning was found 1 times. And world was 1 time. Okay. Now what I've done was you have total word count, which is 6. I mean 7. There are total word count of 7 words. But I also did something else called unique word count, which I forgot to bring up to you. So in this here, you get the total word count. You get the unique word count. That means unique words. Okay. And then you also have your word frequency, which is down here. Okay. So this is my tip on how to get the word frequency from PHP within a file. Okay, so this is the code right here, as you can see. So what you want to do is basically all you have to do is type all this out that you see here highlighted. Stop the video, type it out, save it in a file, call it count word frequency in string.php. Once you get a web server or whatever, if you plan on learning to program and all this stuff. And then you got a nice code, a simple code that you can play with and work with in PHP on getting word frequency. This is a very simple code. You can see code like this where they'll throw in, let's say, 100 lines of code, and you're all confused on what's going on. Okay? And so this string value could also be done in PHP with file get contents. Okay? So what I would do, and so when you understand what file get contents and how that really works, basically all you have to do is add about, I think, 3 more lines of code to this right here, and define this as a file. Make your string file.html, and then go get file.contents and etc., and then put it out from there. It's real simple, and I'll do one later on that, but I don't have that actually in here for this particular code. Okay, so this is the output. Okay, this is the actual content, and the actual live output of the string is right down here. Okay, that's the actual output. Now I wouldn't pay attention to this right here, because what this is extra code that is not in there. All right. Now what this here serves for me as a programmer in my web file. Okay, let's say I go to my database and I want to find and word frequency count. And that's basically what I would do. So let me just give you an example right here. What I've done in my database. Okay, we'll go here. We're gonna go here. Okay, home search. I type in this right here. Paste. Go. Well, this is the frequency. I may not get the right one right off the bat. Okay. All right. So in my database, I say I have this. Okay. I know that was one of the last ones I entered. Okay. So this is the one I'm using here. User made function frequency. So I type it in my database, and I can't remember the code. I'm tired, whatever the reason is, and so I have it in my database. Okay. And so it comes up here. All right. And then like PHP cookies. PHP cookies. All right, and then you'll see that I have things on PHP cookies. Okay, how about sessions? Well, I did that wrong. I spelled it wrong. All right, so I have like sessions. So here I got lots and lots of code that I use to find some things. Okay, but the main thing is that as a programmer, there are different things that you'll do to help yourself. Okay, so what I'm doing is showing you how I work and how I operate. I mean, I got, if I was to paginate my code and find out how much I really have in my database, okay, and I want to find out how many I got, okay, I have roughly 1,191 pages of code that I've simulated over the years to help me learn to program and do things. So this is a long life process that I've been learning and doing this stuff. So I'm no novice by any means in programming. All right. Like I did a video earlier on a special tip for formatting and styling pre-tag elements. So this is the code I use there. Okay. Let's say I'm interested in MySQL rather than MySQL. Okay, so I have code right here. Okay, let me see. It's a little earlier. I know I got it in there somewhere. JavaScript, maybe earlier. I might have actually thrown it in another one. Let me go back here. Home search. MySQLi. There you go. So I have roughly 39 pages on MySQLi, how to program in PHP and MySQL. But that's not what I wanted to show you. I'm just showing you how I, as a programmer, actually work. Okay, so, you know, the main thing is how to append to a file. And well, that's not what I meant. It's let me go last. I'm sorry. The main thing I wanted to show you is basically how to get word frequency. All right, within a file. So there you go. There's the code, how to get word frequency within a file. And hopefully I'll have some more tips. And so it stopped right there, and you can look at the code and enjoy. I hope my code is helpful and useful. I can promise you this is probably, you know, to my belief, the most easiest way, and this is why it's a useful tip, to get word frequency, count, and unique caret count. Now there's more I could show you later on, but we're not going to do that right now. My wife actually wants to turn off the power in the whole house. So I have to shut down everything for her and me to do some things I need to do. Bless our souls. So anyway, have a good day. Be blessed. I hope you enjoy my coding. This is David Sherry with my programming tips for you. Have a good day.